Welcome back to Bettrmma, the best ASMR on MMA YouTube. This is going to be my last minute thoughts and predictions on UFC 301. Starting right off the bat, I'm changing my pick from Paul Craig to Caio Borralho. In reality, Paul Craig is still a BJJ guy in modern MMA, and so I'm going to trust that Caio Borralho, being a Brazilian, he does his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rounds. I don't think he's going to be caught in any stupid submissions like some of other Craig opponents. And I think that Caio, being the younger, more athletic fighter, he's going to be able to at least out-volume Paul Craig when it comes to the stand-up exchanges and be more accurate. I also noticed that on Embedded, Caio Borralho has a newborn baby, a little boy that he has with him during fight week. And I do think that having a newborn child gives you a lot of motivation and inspiration to put on and have a great performance. So I think there's a lot of good positive energy behind Caio Borralho. So I'm changing my pick from Paul Craig to Caio. And this is going in line with my prediction for the Steve Erceg fight. If Steve Erceg is going to win the main event, which I predict he will, the main card for the most part and the prelim cards need to go the way of the Brazilians. And I've predicted pretty much that in my picks video. I've picked a Brazilian in almost every single fight that they're in. I see Caio Borralho getting the win. I picked Vitor Petrino to get the win over Anthony Smith because doesn't 37-20 sound so fitting for Anthony Smith's record? Like, let's be real, guys. He's 37-19 right now. But wouldn't Anthony Smith look so good with those 20 L's next to his name? Like, maybe not good, but it would just make sense, right? We could all see that happening. Going on to my next point here, I think we could see Jose Aldo knocking out Jonathan Martinez. I think a lot of people are putting hype behind Jonathan Martinez because we've seen him do well against guys like Adrian Yanez and really put on these leg kick TKO performances. But I think people are really going to be surprised how well Jose Aldo deals with the leg kicks, and more so how overwhelmed Jonathan Martinez will be by Jose Aldo's boxing. Now, if we see Jose Aldo fighting to the level of his competition, quote unquote, then we could see a much closer fight. But I think if we see the Jose Aldo that we got to see fighting Rob Font or even Merab Dvalishvili, I think that version of Jose Aldo could be able to put on a great performance for his Brazilian crowd and finish Jonathan Martinez most likely with body punches or leg kicks, actually, that leads to a boxing combination that knocks Jonathan Martinez down. I see Jose Aldo winning the leg kick battle, hurting Martinez in the leg kicks, or hurting Martinez with body shots, and then that leading to a boxing combination up top, and then Jonathan Martinez getting finished by a KO TKO. As for my main event prediction, I'm still sticking with Steve Erceg. What this fight has shown about the MMA community is that there are those who understand how live of a dog Steve Erceg is, and then there's another group of people, and it speaks to their human nature, where they're more overwhelmed with numbers and labels that are put next to people's names, rather than just seeing them for the humans that they are. That's what this fight build-up really says to me, because what you have in Steve Erceg is a fighter full of potential, both on the feet and on the ground. He's in great momentum in the UFC, and Alexandre Pantoja has shown weaknesses in terms of his cardio and allowing his opponents to get back into the fight through his lapses in volume due to his struggles with cardio. So I think Steve Erceg really has a good chance in this fight, especially if he comes in shape. It's not too long ago he was just in the Matt Schnell camp, so he had to have a short vacation and get right back into fighting shape. So I think Steve Erceg is going to have a better cardio base for this fight than Alexandre Pantoja. And going back to my earlier point, in order for this to happen, Alexandre Pantoja needs to have a lot of pressure put on him right before the fight. All of the Brazilian fighters need to do very, very well up until the main event. I want Alexandre to feel that pressure as he's stepping into the octagon, as his name is being announced. And all of those things are going to go in Steve Erceg's favor. Steve Erceg has to go into this fight with the mentality of, I'm number 10 ranked. This is in his backyard. All of the pressure is on him. So I can go out here and perform however I want to perform and be completely free and have no inhibitions. Go out there and fight to the best of your ability. Alexandre, on the other hand, I feel like has to go through a lot more overthinking of his process and game planning. And as the fight goes on and his big winging hook combinations aren't landing as often as they do in the first few rounds, that's where Steve Erceg is going to have his advantages in turning the tides of the fight as it goes into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. I feel like I am the chief of the zeitgeist of the non-Australians who picked Steve Erceg in this fight. I'm not here to argue whether he's a boxer or whether he's a grappler. I understand that he has the capabilities of both. We've seen that thus far in his UFC career. What I like from Steve Erceg is the fact that he throws well in the pocket. He has good boxing. He throws heavy shots in the pocket that can crack guys at 125 pounds. But the biggest problem for Steve Erceg thus far in his striking in the UFC is the fact that, like many unseasoned fighters, they get caught admiring their work, meaning that after they hit their opponent with a combination, whether it all hits flush or on the guard, they're caught standing still right in front of their opponent, and their opponent replies with a counter shot, and they get clipped with something. Now, that will be Alexandre's best chance in the first 2 rounds of clipping Steve Erceg. I'm imagining it right now where Steve Erceg is going to get rushed and possibly clipped by one of these shots, and Alexandre is going to dive straight into a takedown trying to take Steve Erceg down. This moment in time in the fight will be the biggest determination of how this fight is going to go. If Alexandre secures the takedown with them both dry in the first round, it is screaming it will be a long night for Steve Erceg. Because if Alexandre is able to start wearing on and fatiguing Steve Erceg from round 1, all of Steve Erceg's potential cardio advantage in the stand-up, it starts to bring that into question. And of course, he has to deal with Alexandre, one of the best, if not the best grappler in the division, all over his back. So that moment where Alexandre clips or gets Steve Erceg backing up to the fence and he shoots in for that first takedown, this will be the determining factor in the fight. It's like Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. We were all going to wonder how he deals with that first takedown. This will be the biggest battle in the first 2 rounds of the fight. And I believe Steve Erceg, being the slightly taller fighter, not that he's out-muscling Alexandre Pantoja, but he has leverage. And as Daniel Cormier has stated, that if you have a fighter who understands how to use their leverage, it's extremely hard to take them down. So I've just simply put faith in this young man, Steve Erceg, who has these very unassuming dimples on his face, and he talks like this, even though he's 28 years old. I've got faith in Steve Erceg, and I think it's sensible for people to think that Alexandre will be able to secure the takedown in the first round. But if you think about it, when do we see dominant performances like that in championship fights? It happens extremely rarely. In recent memory, of course, we could point to John Jones versus Cyril Gane, Rafael Dos Anjos versus Donald Cerrone. If you think about it, it's very, very few and far between where we see an extremely dominant first or second round finish in a championship fight, unless you're dealing with a very dominant champion. Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill that we just saw. Alex Pereira has nuclear power, and Jamal Hill played that game. We saw the result there. Steve Erceg isn't going to go in there to play Alexandre's game. People think that Alexandre is the big dog in this fight, but Steve Erceg, if he sticks to his tools, he has the better advantages in terms of his range managing weapons, meaning his jab and his front kick. And he has some very tricky ways that he likes to set up his hooks in terms of misdirections with his lead hand, and of course setting up his hooks with shots to the body, which you guys know I love seeing fighters attacking different targets in sequence, in a combination. I think it just really speaks to the people that don't necessarily look at the game with a very close eye. And this is precisely why I have this like fake beef with Lucas Tracy. Like, in all reality, I think Lucas Tracy is good for the MMA community, just getting people interested in the independently produced side of MMA YouTube. The fact that he shouts out Rigo, and it just seems like a genuinely chill dude overall. But Lucas Tracy fails to recognize any of these small details. It's why I call him a casual in denial. Because it's the eyes that they view MMA through. They paint with a very broad brush. I have a unique background where I'm able to view the artistic side of each fighter. That if you consider these two arts that are facing at UFC 301, Alexandre Pantoja is going to go out there like the hungry dog. Steve Erceg is going to have to be like water and move with the waves. The problem with the people picking Pantoja is the fact that they view Pantoja as though he's way more dangerous than he actually is. But when was the last time that we saw Alexandre Pantoja putting anybody to sleep on the feet or putting together some great boxing combinations and footwork? Alexandre has some pretty bad footwork when in terms of where he decides to throw his shots from. If you have a guy like Steve Erceg who knows how to throw counters and time a guy when he's in the middle of his combination, I think we could see Steve Erceg clipping Alexandre at one of these points in time. But the biggest point that needs to be made here, Steve Erceg needs to be in and out. In and out. He can't be caught admiring his work standing in front of Alexandre after he gets caught in the pocket with him. He's got to go in the pocket, throw his combinations, and move his feet outward. If his coaches are any good, and if they're worth any money, if they got Steve Erceg's back, they should have taught him that for this camp. So I look forward to seeing that. He's got to work on that, and he's got to implement that in his fight with Alexandre. And as I said before, if he could pull off a perfect 25 minutes, he's going to bring the chippy down under. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, guys. Believe in something. Steve Erceg will be your UFC flyweight champion. Believe in something. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Comment on the fucking video, dog. Like the fucking video, dog. This is Bettrmma giving you the best MMA takes, dog. Peace.